The National Association for Gun Rights is the second largest gun group behind only the NRA. The president is Dudley Brown, and he is our guest. An article from USA Today. National Foundation for Gun Rights raises $50,000 to support Kenosha shooting suspect Kyle RIttenhouse. Dudley, why do that?
Well, Michael, I mean, we're really doing it because we see a young man who practiced his rights to self-defense, and in a very tense situation did a job better than most police officers could handle in that case, and he's being prosecuted for it. And we looked at the situation and said, if they can prosecute him, they can prosecute anybody for self-defense. And so we figured we'd jump to his aid, and our members agreed and donated in large quantities. And I promised that we'd spend every penny we raised on to help him directly, and we did. We wrote the check. In fact, yesterday got an email of the picture of Miss Rittenhouse and her attorney, Kyle's attorney, John Pierce, with the check in hand. So mission accomplished.
You know, people will point out his age and crossing state lines, but it strikes me that if the police and law enforcement are not going to do their jobs, American citizens are going to step in and do it for them, and that is the protection of the weak.
Well, the interesting part about all that is that the state of Wisconsin, just so everybody, all your listeners understand, Kyle Rittenhouse is in a detention facility in Illinois where he lives and where he was arrested. He is fighting extradition to just across the border. It's 15 miles to Wisconsin, where he works or did work. Kyle Rittenhouse was a lifeguard there in Wisconsin, and so he crossed state line to go to work. And young man didn't cross state lines with a firearm. The firearm was acquired legally in Wisconsin, and the interesting part about all that is Wisconsin wants to charge him once they extradite him, if they extradite him, as an adult. Yet they say he can't have the tools for self-defense in the state of Wisconsin because he's 17. Now that's patently ludicrous. You're saying a 17-year-old in America can join the Marine Corps, drive a tank, fire the main gun out of the tank, can possess an M16, M4 within the military, but doesn't have the right to self-defense? That's outrageous. And I've even heard, Michael, some people in the so-called gun community who have said, "Oh, well, you know, he didn't live up to the state laws on guns." Well, I don't know about you, Michael. I don't agree with these state laws. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with Texas's laws on guns. They are horrible on guns. In fact, Texas, for a Republican state, a red state, is one of the worst in the country for gun laws. And I don't begrudge people who in the heat of the moment use a firearm for self-defense, and then we go back and say, "Oh, well, gee, they violated a gun law." Well, last time I checked, the Constitution trumps a state law.
Well, and what people don't seem to focus on is that he was in a state of retreat throughout. He was left with no option. You corner a deer, and they'll shred you to pieces. I mean, what other option did the man have?
Yeah, and I don't think when you're in that situation, and of course, God forbid we ever end up in that situation. I've never been in it, thankfully. But if I'm cornered and have a angry mob chasing me, how will you react? I don't think I'm going to look at my options and think, which one of these is the most legal? Which one can I actually use? Oh, well, gosh, I'll be in violation of the state law if I use the proper tool of self-defense. So I guess I better not do that. I mean, you grab and use whatever you have at hand. And if you look at the actual details of the shooting, and I've trained literally thousands of people in defensive use of both handguns and carbines. If you look at that situation, Rittenhouse shot the three suspects who are aggressively going after him at the time, and no one else. He didn't inadvertently shoot someone, negligently shoot someone behind them, and he didn't shoot them as they were retreating. He shot them as they were aggressing toward him. In one case, one who was reaching and had touched the barrel of his AR. In another case of a guy who actually had a handgun in his hand. If you see some of the video, people were swinging at him and chasing him and yelling, "Kill him!" And this brings up another issue that's popping up, and it's going to pop up all around the country. Rochester, New York, last week, an older man in his own house was confronted by a mob. The mob outside of his house, surrounding his house, chanting at him because he had Donald Trump flags and signs and things like that, and a back the blue type flag, and they started yelling and screaming at him, and he had a shotgun in his house. He was standing inside of his house, showing the people through the window that he had a shotgun. And the police came in the house and arrested him. Now, we're checking in on what those charges were, if they actually filed charges. But if they can do that in your own home, there is nothing stopping these people. And this is the important part. This was the police. Now, last time I checked, police officers
Is it your intention to raise money for his defense if he is charged?
I don't know. It'd be too early to tell. I want to check the details. Now, I need to make it perfectly clear. We're not supporting Kyle Rittenhouse because reportedly he's a Trump supporter or he's a Republican or this or that. He's a 17-year-old young man who had every right to self-defense, and he was doing really the job of law enforcement there in Kenosha. And this older man in Rochester, New York, he had a sign up at his house, a Donald Trump sign. We're not. If we support him, it won't be because of that. Has nothing to do with that. Frankly, I think both of the presidential candidates are terrible on guns. Both of the mainstream candidates. And we can go into that on detail. It's certainly controversial, but anybody who tells you that Donald Trump is a hero on the Second Amendment is lying to you.
We'll discuss
They're
that.
just lying to you.
We'll discuss that and your organization coming up. Dudley Brown is the president of the National Association for Gun Rights, based out of Colorado. It was the national companion to the Rocky Mountain gun owners, and we'll continue talking to him coming up next.
With his finger on the pulse, the King of Ting continues on The Michael Berry Show.
We're talking to Dudley Brown of the National Association for Gun Rights, who's gone and pissed off about 90% of our Trump-loving audience by saying that the president is insufficiently supportive of gun rights. Let's start by saying, in case somebody wants to tune you out, you'd say he's better than Biden.
Yeah, but I mean, I have a different scale for Republicans than I do for Democrats. But
what is your primary complaint on the president?
Well, to be clear, my organization, and I'm a lifetime Republican, and I've been a delegate to the last two national conventions, not this cycle. In fact, I even sat on the Rules Committee in 2012 in Tampa, and I have, I think, as good a credentials within the Republican Party as I'm willing to stomach. But the simple fact is, I base my views and our organization's views on politicians based on what they do and what they intend to do and what they signal, and frankly, a lot of the things they do behind the scenes. Both presidential candidates are very bad on the Second Amendment. Unfortunately, with Donald Trump, it's not necessarily in his rhetoric, except of course when he was talking about taking the guns first and then due process second. But he banned bump stocks, frankly, at the behest of the NRA, with the stroke of a pen. And I don't know bump stock. I think they're gimmicky, but I also don't want to ban them, especially for a device that has never been certified to be used in a crime ever. Even the Las Vegas shooters, we don't know that was actually used. He passed Fix Nix, which was a broad expansion of the Brady Act. That was sponsored by your U.S. Senator John Cornyn, and then of course the whole red flag debacle that happened shortly after Parkland and until about a year ago was front and center for many people in the White House. Many of the staff members in the White House were pushing it. Then he made comments about suppressors further regulating, in other words, banning suppressors, and the concern was also pistol braces, which is a growing sector of the AR-15 market. And this leads to something, Michael, that our organization, the National Association for Gun Rights, and we have state-level groups, including Texas Gun Rights, very active in your state legislature. You might have noted when former Speaker of the House, when Bonin was current Speaker of the House, when we challenged him to a lawsuit, and frankly, if he didn't apologize for violating the First Amendment rights of our lobbyist. But as an organization, we pride ourselves in things we won't do. First off, what we won't do is we won't cover for politicians just because they have the right letter after their name, or just because they're nice and friendly. That's great. Frankly, our Constitution, though, is being shredded by politicians who are all sometimes very nice people. We're going to give you what we won't do is charter private jets and fly around the world, or go on $50,000 shopping sprees in Beverly Hills on donors' dimes. But maybe most importantly, we're not going to cut deals on gun control in Washington, D.C. or state legislatures because it's the best thing we can get right now, or it's our fallback position. We believe our donors demand that we draw a line in the sand and say, this is what the Constitution says, this is what it means. Cross that line at your own peril, and we're going to hold you accountable in the next election, period, end of sentence. We don't care who you run against. We don't care, frankly, who you're friends with, and we don't care if we don't get invites to cocktail parties in Washington, D.C. I've been to those. I've been a gun lobbyist for 27 years now, and frankly, I'd rather be shooting guns at the range with my kids than go to cocktail parties in Washington, D.C. So if you want the unvarnished truth from veterans of political battles and people who actually know what's going on in Washington, D.C., we're your organization. If you want to have smoke blowing up your skirt, well, by all means, join the institutional gun lobby, which is in total freefall right now. They're your organization because we're not going to compromise on the Second Amendment. We think it's already been compromised enough. The Brady Act itself was a compromise formed by the National Rifle Association and agreed to, and with Republicans' approval. And that's the system right now that is the main vehicle for gun control in America.
Will your organization be supporting the president?
Our federal PAC has not endorsed anybody for president. Nope. We can't, in good conscience, do that. Now, can we hold Joe Biden accountable for his outrageously bad views and policies and actions on guns? Absolutely. In fact, we're doing it right now. We're running commercials in some of the key states where we think where it's the marginal states where electoral votes are at risk, not swinging one way or the other completely, holding Joe Biden accountable for him. And that's our job, is to be very honest with voters and constituents, and especially gun owners. And that's what we do.
Fair enough. Dudley Brown, National Association for Gun Rights. Thanks for being our guest, my man.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, that is the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, the young man in Wisconsin. They have provided $50,000 for his defense. He is the young man who was being chased, had fallen to the ground, and I truly believe they were going to kill him had he not fired back at the armed assailant among them who had taken him down. It's going to be interesting. It'd be hard to find a jury in this state, I can tell you that would convict him.